Welcome to hull number 5.
In October of 2024, Aaron and I bought a neglected 1964 Grand Banks that had been left to rot for over 5 years. This being the 5th oldest Grand Banks ever built, it would have been a shame to let her fall into disrepair and ultimately sink. Having received zero maintenance since 2005, every aspect of the boat needed work, from the engines to severe wood rot, and even the eviction of hundreds of spiders that called our boat home. Join us as we spend the next 6 months completely restoring and remodeling this classic wooden trawler from start to finish, and stay tuned for the big reveal at the end of the video. By the time we finally got a hold of the owner, it was bad news on top of bad news.
You can see the bilge completely full of water.
Neither engine would fire, and all the bilge pumps were dead, and water had fried most of the electronics. Luckily, he let me have a crack at it before making a final decision, and we spent the next few weeks getting a feel for what mechanical state the boat was in. Classic mechanically injected diesels are nearly indestructible, so I was pretty sure I could get things running again. I tore out the old fuel system and started fresh, replacing the old starters and replacing some wiring. New fuel filters and hoses is all it took to start the portside engine. The starboard engine was trickier. I took weeks to figure out that a simple spring-loaded fuel rail stop in the injection pump was seized, and once I gave it some grease, the engine fired up instantly.
Look at what I did! Oh my god, finally. Oh my god, finally.
A quick service and things were looking good. I replaced the wiring and pump so that we'd stay afloat, and it was on to the haul out. There was really nothing to be concerned about once we looked underneath. Despite being a 60-year-old wooden vessel, the teak planking was in great shape, and the surveyor gave the insurance company the green light. The next day, the boat was ours. After a long rainy winter, it was finally time to get restoring. Starting with the most satisfying part, which was cleaning years of gunk off this boat. Lots of moss and grime had accumulated over the years, and just a heavy scrub was enough to significantly improve its appearance. Next, we began tearing off all of the worn teak trim, exposing a few more spider habitats, before we started tearing apart the fiberglass that was peeling off the side of the cabin.
Look at all that moss that has grown there. We're gonna try to reclaim all of these strips. We'll sand them off, and then we're gonna revarnish them and stick them back on. Look at the bed of moss. Have been, oh yeah.
We discovered several spots like this that turned out to be far worse than expected, with many layers of delaminating fiberglass and plywood. Another very time-consuming part of the restoration is stripping off as much old paint as you can. For the really flaky spots like this, a paint scraper can get most of it off, and some areas were very stubborn and required lots and lots of hours to remove.
Not sure what's going on in there. Smooch. Okay, that's not too bad.
I'm mixing some fiberglass Bondo as well as other epoxy fairing compounds to fill all the voids on the outside of the boat. We ended up going through several gallons of epoxy to reinforce and seal all the rotten wood. Along the edges of the cabins, we're applying a couple strips of fiberglass to reinforce and waterproof all the sharp edges. Some of the larger areas, like this corner, will take several layers of fiberglass to fully seal and reinforce. For the most stubborn paint and varnish spots, we tried using a heat gun to lift the old paint off the surface of the plywood. Up front, these seams need to be glassed for strength and water resistance. After all the fiberglass work was done, came the first coats of primer. This completely changed the look of the boat, properly rescuing its appearance. We ended up applying about 4 gallons of topside primer. Up top, we discovered many delaminated areas beyond epoxy repair, so our plan is to completely remodel the upper deck. We'll be adding 2 couches, a fridge, and vertical cladding on the bulkhead and sides of the seats. These were stands for an old top-mounted rowboat that must have come with this boat 60 years ago. We don't need them anymore, since we're getting an aluminum dinghy that will rest on the swim deck. These doors are far beyond repair and will need to be completely rebuilt. I'm gonna reuse the old bronze hardware and use the old door as a template for a new one. Simply tracing the old door shape, cutting 2 1/4-inch plywood sheets, and gluing the interior frame will make durable doors so long as they're sealed with quality topside paint. We started befriending the local wildlife, which quickly meant upgrading from a 4-pound bag of feed to a 20-pound bag of feed to feed the entire city. Where the old rowboat stowage was, we decided to build a tiered garden with drainage using bent PVC pipes. The entire plywood frame is sealed using liquid rubber, and each garden level will drain to the starboard edge.
You're like Snow White. They're coming from this side.
Seriously?
Get back on your thing.
Once fully assembled, we can mix up some soil and fill the raised beds. To keep the birds out, I melted together a tailored plastic sheet to form a cover framed with flexible PVC struts. The next morning, after having fed all of the geese and all of their goslings, it was time to get to varnishing, a step that is going to be repeated over and over and over again. Here's my mom repainting and revarnishing the Galatea sign. Each one of these newly varnished pieces of teak are going to need between 10 and 15 coats to last several seasons. We decide to paint the window frames blue to be more congruent with the Sunbrella navy blue up top on the bimini. On the top deck, I begin the cladding process by tracing and cutting individual pieces of 1/4-inch plywood. I need to remake the bulkhead cabinet doors on the top deck. I remove them and trace them out on fresh plywood, then route the flutes so they fit snugly. The original craftsmanship on this boat was incredible. Each vent is made of teak and can be varnished right back to its original form. The teak trim we removed at the beginning can now be sanded and revarnished. The wood around the back deck has suffered decades of water damage as the drains have clogged due to neglect. They may eventually need replacing, but for now can be sanded down flush and revarnished. To build the couches on the top deck, I build a frame out of pine and plywood. Store-bought cushions will rest on top. Next, we paint the inside edge of the hull with topside paint. It's finally time to take her out to sea.
All vessels in the large lock, stand by your lines. The water level is changing.
We travel through the locks and into larger waters to learn what mechanical problems arise when pushed to her limit to be addressed later at the boatyard. After a nice time in the Puget Sound, she's hauled out once again to continue our restoration. We decide to polish the bronze rub rails and eyelets around the boat by sanding and buffing. Since we're going to be repainting the hull, we need to sand and fair the entire boat before applying primer. While I'm spraying the primer on the boat, Aaron sands and buffs the bronze step rails. Now it's time to roll on several coats of dark blue paint over the hull. In order to replace the cutlass bearings and fix a leak, we need to remove the prop shafts. I take this opportunity to repack both stuffing boxes. We identified the patinaed bronze washer plate under the shaft log as the source of the leak. I use a jigsaw to cut out the opening from a trace template. The freshly polished props can now go back on. I mask and roll on a white boot stripe. The next step is to prime the seams with anti-fouling paint before compounding. This step, along with all of the seam compound, took us an all-nighter to complete. I decide to re-cork several questionable seams. We can finally expose our beautiful polishing work on the bronze rub rails. The final step before launching is to paint the bottom with anti-fouling paint. And replace all the zincs that serve as sacrificial anodes, 2 on each prop shaft and 1 large one at the aft of the boat. And there she is in beautiful tricolor form. Until the next haul out, this is the last time we're going to get to see all 3 layers of coloring exposed. She's gonna have to sit in the slings over the weekend to allow time for the teak planks to swell up. The boat was fully dry before launching. This gives us ample time to varnish the transom while the good weather lasts. She's now completely floating under her own buoyancy and can be safely driven back to our marina, where Aaron quickly rushes to the transom to give her another coat of varnish. The lazarette hatches have seen better days. I strip out the old insulation material, reinforce them with penetrating epoxy, and replace the insulation with foam. I give the hatches a quick coat of bilge coat to prevent mold. She's now thoroughly restored. Although an old wooden boat will always remain a work in progress, she's ready to be shown off. Tune in next time to watch the full boat tour and see how we transform the interior. Thank you so much for watching our restoration, and please subscribe to the channel to follow more of our future adventures.